we were in chapter 2, and we were talking about where Jesus changes water to wine. Does anybody have any questions on that or another comment before we move into the where Jesus clears the temple? I'll take that as a no. So, okay, good. So we're up to this area in chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 13 all the way to 25. And then we'll start breaking it down as we go through that. Do I have any volunteers that want to read verses 13 through 25?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Thank you, Joel.
When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and other settings at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep, cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." His disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then responded to him, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple and I will raise it in 3 days." They replied, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said, and they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. Now, while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in his name. But Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He did not need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person.
All right, thank you. What's your first takeaway on this passage? What do you see here that's different than what you've seen in the past? What about Jesus's response? What do you think about that?
He seems a little angry.
He was angry.
Yeah. It seems first sign of some good rage out of him, honestly.
Yeah. He had enough, it looked like.
Yes, he did. Yeah, and we hadn't seen that before, had we?
Nope.
What do you make of that?
It was in good reason. They were there for all the wrong reasons.
They being what?
All of the merchants,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it's hard to say if they were there for any good reasons. I mean, maybe some were, but I look at it as they were there trying to make some money, maybe scam some people. You were walking up the door and you maybe didn't have what you needed that day, and they're trying to make a buck out of you or something.
Sure.
So he was very upset that people were taking advantage of other people, especially at his Father's house like that.
That's a very good summary, I would say.
I think it's also important to note that it was Passover, and so you're going to have people coming from all over to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices and stuff. And so there's going to be not just the normal people, or the population. I saw one number that was like 600,000 that was in Jerusalem. And Passover would be like close to. Wow. So like 400,000 people, visitors to one city, like it's a large number. And so not only these people, ripping off the people that normally come, they're ripping off these visitors. They're coming for Passover, coming for a seemingly a pardon, right? The Passover was to offer a sacrifice for your sins for the whole year. So they're coming to do it, a thing to appease God's wrath and they're encountering these people who are trying to take advantage of them. So it's
Yeah, and I guess they traveled afar, so they weren't gonna bring their sacrifice with them. They could buy it there, and it was a matter of convenience. So those that were there selling were taking advantage of that moment.
yeah, I think that it was probably it may have started in good faith, right? But
Yeah,
we're gonna provide
we're gonna help them.
yeah, we're gonna provide these animals, because the sacrifices had to be without blemish, right? They had to be inspected, and so even if you brought your own lamb, right, the whoever it was, the Levitical people, the priests and stuff would check the animal, and if they found anything that was close to a blemish, they would reject it. And so now you brought this whole, you kept this and fed this animal alive for however long you traveled there, and now it's worthless pretty much. So now you have to go and buy the animal that they're offering anyway.
Right.
So like, well, might as well just leave it at home and go there and buy it. And so when you think about it, like, okay, that's like, it's like offering someone,
A convenience.
a convenience, right? Because okay, well, and then but they what always happens with humans is we go and we try to capitalize off of it, right? And we turn it into a sin, something that's not supposed to be sinful at all. We always mess it up. So,
We always mess it up. I think we do it today.
yeah. And it's easy to say that we're on one side and that we're looking at these people, these Levitical people, and looking at, oh man, how bad they are. But like, we are those people.
We are those
We are.
people. Right, so we can. Arnell, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was going to just chime in on that. I agree that it started out maybe as a good thing, but then at time it turned into a ripoff, like Joel and Ben were saying, that the money changers, people were from all over the world, and the rate that they would give the money exchange would be, I've heard people say half of what the value was of your so if it was $1, you can get 50 cents to go and buy the sacrifice. And so you're being ripped off. And my understanding, this whole market and everything used to be outside of the temple, and that the high priest had basically turned this into a very well managed oil rip-off machine, and they moved it from outside of the temple into the temple court. And the outer temple court, which is where the women came to worship, and where, my understanding, Gentiles who had been converted to Jews would come to worship. So you had all these animals and all this stuff going on where these people were supposed to be worshiping God in the outer court of the temple, because they couldn't go further in where the Jews and the men worshiped.
Yeah. That's good. Any other comments from anybody out there?
I kind of just feel like Jesus snapped at the height of his hypocrisy, and it was just too much for him to see them desecrating his father's house.
Yeah.
He went postal, so to speak.
He
said he went postal, so to speak. He had enough.
I guess
it is. Like I said, it did.
he could have.
That was it.
He could have leveled them all right there.
And
That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. When they moved it inside, that was it. It was over. Yep, it's done. I think you're right. He could have just
Flattened everybody, right? Go ahead, Ben. You were gonna say.
he didn't direct his anger at anyone, right? Like, he did it at the money changers, but he didn't like we say, like, making a whip of cords and throw them all out.
Let's stop right there. I want to talk about that, but go ahead.
That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, he's not physically hurting anyone, right?
Right.
And I mean, it could be very he could have very well used that cord simply to get the oxen to move and like the cattle to move and the animals to get out. But yeah, so.
You're just shooing them out.
Yeah, and it caused everyone else to.
But it definitely is a righteous anger that he had, and like they said, it was the zeal for his father's house.
Righteous anger. Let's go down there a little bit.
Okay.
What would you call righteous anger? How would you define that?
Anger. Anger with valid reason.
Okay. Anybody kind of connect with what he's saying there?
That's very loose.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the point that you're getting at. Anger for, like you said, a valid reason, a reason that is kind of.
I'll say maybe a biblically valid reason. There can be a lot of valid reasons to be angry, but you can be angry and sin. But later,
You can be angry at sin too.
Yeah, it says, be angry but do not sin.
Yeah, right, Ephesians, you think. So my commentary says, God approves of anger at sin, and he references Ephesians 4:26. And that's where it says, in your anger, do not sin. So that's the exact opposite. In other words, I take it as, don't sin, because people anger, or look how angry people we got around today,
Yeah.
and they do things that cause sin. Further, my commentary says, so God approves of anger at sin and desires that his servants take appropriate action against it. Jesus acted as he did because of the money changers' dishonesty and their disregard for the purpose of the temple worship. Jesus would clear out the temple again near the end of his public ministry, and it's referenced in Luke. I don't want to get to that point right now, but there's no record that he hurt anyone.
Yeah.
But he created this whip. What's your take on that?
I think it's kind of maybe what he was saying. Use it, maybe get the animals moving, maybe. To get the animals moving, maybe it's a whip. I don't know. To get, I don't know.
Strike fear.
Yeah, crack the whip and get the oxen and stuff. Maybe.
It says here he made it.
Yeah.
What
did you say? Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
And,
Indiana Jones.
The driver.
Not even the carpenter.
Yeah, really.
All right. So he made this cord. And to your point, Kevin, he could have just used that whip just to drive the cattle and the livestock.
Yeah, kind of like what he was saying.
Yeah.
Ben was saying, just kind of get things
Moving.
get them moving, and they would.
What do you think he's talking about? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting that he took the time to make the whip. So it wasn't just a burst of anger and he was over there yelling at people and trying to run them out. It was a thought out plan that he got these cords probably from, the guys who brought the cattle in and all that kind of stuff. There may be cords around that he made this whip. And I find it interesting. He turned over the tables. He ran out the oxen and all the sheep and all that stuff. But when it came down to the table that had the doves, he didn't do anything there. He didn't open the boxes and let the doves out. He didn't turn them over. He didn't. So what ended up, I see, is nobody lost anything. They didn't lose their cattle. They didn't lose their doves. They didn't lose anything. He didn't hurt anybody financially or physically. He just told them to get out of his father's house. So in his anger, he didn't cause anybody harm in any way at all.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think probably 9 out of 10 times when I'm angry, I'm probably causing someone's harm, right? Like not physically, but like,
Something, yeah.
yeah, like you're probably, when you're angry, you're probably gonna say something you know, want to pull back. Like it's hard to have that righteous anger that have without sinning, right?
He kind of chastised the money changers and, you know, made a scene.
Yeah.
You know, made a scene, and this, you know, I like to think of Jesus as kind and compassionate and loving. So it's a different moment here.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this before that, like no one has seen the Father, but if we see Jesus, we have a relationship with Jesus, then we know the Father, right? Yeah. And so we know that Jesus is the manifestation of God, and that God in the Old Testament is love and, you know, is compassionate, but he also has this zeal and this fire, and this high standards for his glory and receiving his glory, and that if these people are here, he's not receiving his glory, right?
So he made the whip out of cords, and he drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." 17 says, his disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." That's a reference to Psalm 69:9. So what are your thoughts on that? Or do you have any?
Could the whip be symbolic in the sense that he's, you know, to further the discussion somebody just said, he didn't hurt anybody. Could it be symbolic that he's reminding us that we are to be servants to God? You know, reminding us gently what our place is.
It's possible. I mean, you know, whips were common use of torture and things like that back then.
Servants and slaves. Reminding us to humble ourselves.
To obey, and we're getting down to why he wanted that. So in verse 18, the then responded to him, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" And Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." And they replied, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But the temple he had spoken of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. And they believed the scripture and the words that spoken. What do you think about this whole section? Chris, I'm gonna mute you because it sounds like you're driving. Okay? No, it's Arnell. I'm sorry. It's Arnell. Thank you, Arnell. So, what are your thoughts about the reference to his body being the temple here?
Hey,
So we got
Kevin,
physical structure. Go ahead, Arnell.
Yeah, I was going to try to tie that together with two different things. One, I don't know that we've discussed what was going on at the temple, that it was a celebration of the Passover. And I think that has a huge implication and impact into what Jesus was doing. And then that ties back into the temple and the 3 days and the symbol and all that stuff. So do you want to go over that, or to because I know you know what it was about.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier about Passover, and you know, everybody coming to sacrifice at the temple, which is Father's house. And so they were using that as it's a very holy place. It's not to be used for money changing and benefit of others, to make money and things like that. So as Kevin pointed out, it's desecrating a whole event.
So can you guys hear me? Okay. Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking more along of the reason for the celebration. The Passover feast was, a celebration of the Jews being passed over on the night of death in Egypt, when God sent the angel of death throughout Egypt and killed every firstborn thing alive, man, animals, kids. It didn't matter who it was. If you didn't have the blood of the lamb that was across the top of your house, your firstborn was going to be killed that night. And those who had listened to God and put the blood over their doorpost of that lamb, their family was spared that horrible night and the death of their firstborn. And that's the celebration that they were celebrating, and that was the last thing that happened before the people were freed and let out of Egypt. And then there was a whole new calendar started. Their whole life started and changed at that point of the Passover. And this was the celebration that they were having that day, and that's when Jesus came. And I think that has a very, very heavy impact as to why Jesus was there, what his mindset was, and all the symbolism of the cord and everything else that he talks about in the rest of these scriptures. So anyway.
No, that was good summary. Thank you, Arnell. And everything you said, I fully track, and I think everybody here is tracking as well. And it's an Old Testament event that everybody was understanding at that time, but because nobody knew who Jesus was, or not other than the disciples and others there. Okay.
Going back to verse 17, the disciples remember that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." I was thinking, like, application for our lives, just from that, is being able to recall when God's doing something, or recall one of God's attributes because we are reading the Bible and because we know the Word and because we're studying it, right? I feel like when we're studying the Word and when we're have it open and reading it, the more we're going to see God working, the more we're going to attribute things that could maybe we wouldn't see or attribute to God if we weren't reading. And so I think it's important just to recall that. I mean, just as one verse, I know in that situation I wouldn't be able to recall that, right? I don't know the Psalms that well.
No.
So it's like thinking like how well they knew the Torah and the Psalms, and
that's a great point.
Yeah, it's important for us to have that same knowledge of the scriptures, both for praising God, but also in times of need, being able to recite scripture is important as well.
How's the spiritual warfare of it as well?
Yeah.
We're armed with His Word, to protect us against the evil one. But you're right; they knew the Torah and all of that, and I wouldn't have remembered that. I mean, what do you think when he says, when Psalm says, "Zeal for your house will consume you"? What does that mean to you, Kevin or Jacob?
I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about the whole time. I don't know what that means.
I don't either. That's why I'm asking
for
the
your
question.
house. Yeah, I know.
So, any idea out there in it's called in verse 17, when the disciples remembered that it is written, zeal for your house will consume me. What does zeal for your house will consume me? What do you think that means? What does zeal mean? Let's start there.
I don't know.
I Googled it.
And what does it say?
It says a great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective.
Okay. So zeal for your house will consume you.
Does that mean if you continually seek after him and follow him and just immerse yourself? Is that what that means? I don't know. That you'll eventually will consume yourself? I don't know.
We should be consumed with that.
Yeah.
Back to that house again. Father's house, the temple. I'm struggling with context of how that.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah.
Listen, one thing, the word house, I think that's one of the keys. They were looking, he told David, he said, God told David, he said, you can't, can you build me a temple where I can dwell? And a lot of times we look at, and all of us just being human, look at more of a physical structure. But I really believe the house was God's people. And one of the whole thing about this was a misrepresentation of God. Where you had to buy your way in, it's like, if you didn't have, poor people bought doves for the sacrifice, but the oxen and the sheep were cost a lot more money than the doves. And I really believe this whole thing had to do with people walking away with a bad perception of who God was because of the fact that the people who were supposed to represent God sold this stuff, like the teachers and the scribes and everything. And I think that was one of the zeals. I mean, one part of his zeal was that the fact that God was being totally misrepresented. And the house here is, in my opinion, is God's people. Paul says, "No, you not. You are the temple of the Holy Ghost."
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what Cornell was saying earlier, that where the market was where the Gentiles would come and where the women would come and worship, and that they're stopping those people from worshiping because they thought they were less than, right? They looked down on Gentiles because they weren't part of God's chosen people. And so and we see it throughout the whole gospel that Jesus is always a lot harsher and stricter on the spiritually the leaders than he is the people that are just non-believers. Because these people.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Arnell, are you there?
Yeah, I lost all the audio. Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Are you there, Arnell?
Yeah. I can't hear I can't hear the guys.
I can't either. I'm on my phone though. I can't see them either.
Oh, well, I can see them, but I can't hear them.
Yeah, I think they moved.
I'm still here, Chris from New Jersey. I'm on my phone too.
So, Chris, can you hear
Something
them?
must have happened.
I can hear you guys. I can't hear the office anymore.
Yeah.
I can see them good.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Tony. I'm going to text Kevin real quick.
Wonder if somehow he muted something.
I can walk over there and tell them. I'll walk over there.
Let's see if he,
You know, Arnell, are we not connected with them through that speaker conference phone?
yeah, we are.
So if that dropped out, we would lose the audio because it's not coming through his computer. He's hosting it through his computer, but we're hearing it through the conference speaker phone. So if somehow that got hung up or muted, if somebody accidentally somehow it got muted, then I think we wouldn't be able to hear them.
I think they've noticed it now. They're looking at the screen.
Yeah.
Can you see the conference room thing? You know, the if you're on video,
Yeah,
can you
see
see the
them,
conference? You can see
Yeah.
that? Is that
Yeah,
muted?
No, I can't see that.
Yeah, it looks like the conference room is muted.
Ah,
You
they're
need
back.
to unmute it.
All right, I can hear them now.
All right, cool.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I'm in here with them. I'm in here with them.
Okay, I can hear them now.
Hear them now?
Jana, just stand there and hold the phone.
Just stand there,
Okay.
Jana.
Can you hear us now? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
You're live.
Okay, we gotta start over. Who wants to read? All right, so we were talking about, I asked a question. I'm not sure how much you missed. I know Tony was talking about the temple being the people. Do we see how John portrays Jesus as the temple? And then reference verse 19. Again, that's the reference to his body when he was, to be crucified, died, and then was raised again in 3 days.
Cool. Yeah, I wanted to comment too on the body, on the house thing, because I think Tony and Ben and all are right on that. I was thinking, he didn't say zeal for your temple consumed me. He said zeal for your house consumed me. And then I was thinking, in the Old Testament, they talked about, like with David, they said, in the house of David will be one who sits on your throne. And so when they talked about house, they talked about the family. And it wasn't just immediate family. It was, your whole entire lineage. So you're from beginning to the end of your family. When they talked about your house, they referenced your family. So I kind of feel like Tony's on the right track when he was talking about zeal for your house, which is God's people, God's family. From the beginning of time to the end of time, the zeal will consume him. So that would be the one thing that his whole life would be about, that family and protecting that family. And the driving out of the animals and stuff, I think that's part of him protecting the physical family of those people at the time. But then there's a reference to all of this back in 1 Corinthians where it talks about our bodies are the temple. And I think there's a lot of stuff tied back into 1 Corinthians about driving out the money changers and all that, and sin in our lives and a whole bunch of other stuff. So
No, that's very good, Arnell. I'm just trying to get to that Corinthians verse. I think it's 1 Corinthians 1:22.
I think it's 1 Corinthians 6. verse 19, I think.
Okay. Well, I can't put my finger on it right now, but our bodies are a temple. They're a gift. We should be taking care of them.
6:19.
6:19, what's it say?
Yeah,
For do you not
6:19.
know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God. You are not your own. For you were bought with a price, so glorify God in your body.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, so
I don't know,
so what I was thinking, part of that is that Jesus was, clearing out those guys, and that was a symbol of sin. The sin that could be in our lives, and us being the body, our body being the temple, and that the sin needs to be driven away from our lives, and we need to clear out the things that are defiling the temple or defiling our lives, not necessarily physical things, but spiritual things and sin that tend to creep into our lives like they did into the temple.
right, and we need to cleanse our own temples. We need to cleanse our own self. So he knew the people's hearts there, which brings me to verses 23. Now, while he was in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, many people saw the signs he was performing and believed in his name. Verse 24 says, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. He did not need any testimony about mankind, for he knew what was in each person. So that to me is, he knew their hearts. He knows our hearts. We can't hide it.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this whole passage, the cleansing of the temple, is that the church today, and obviously the temple back then, is supposed to be a distinct difference and distinctly different from the world around it, right? You're supposed to be able to see a clear line between where people who believe in God, how they act, and people who do not believe in God, how they act, who have a saving relationship with Jesus, right? And there's no distinction in this passage, right, between where